Boy, I got a whopper for you, and I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It's an unusual record. It's a style that you don't hear anymore. It's a record that the style of this record harkens back. Remember from my childhood and my adolescence, but it's a spoken word record that you seldom hear anymore, and that's really been seldom heard, at least over the last 40 years or so. But this is a hell of a combination right here. We got Joe Jonas of the Jonas Brothers teaming up with William Shatner doing Clouds of Guilt. It's from William Shatner's brand new album. Well, it's been out for a while, at least over the past year. The album is called Bill. He's got another song on this album too. He does with Brad Paisley, country star Brad Paisley. And that's not the first time Brad Paisley's worked with a TV or movie celebrity. He also worked with Andy Griffith on a song that Brad Paisley did some years ago. But he does a song with William Shatner, So Far From the Moon. And this is, I haven't heard the record. I'm going to try to give it a listen to later on. I haven't heard this one. But it's about William Shatner sharing his experience listening to the moon landing, the Apollo 11 moon landing back in the summer of 1969, which was it was sort of a cataclysmic thing for science, for American technology. It was one of these iconic historical points. Well, just points. I was trying to come up with another word for it, but anyway, it's Joe Jonas and Clouds of Guilt. This song, now this is not William Shatner's first foray into doing songs and music. Back in 1968, during the original Star Trek, he came out with an album. There was an album that he did called Transform Man. And he covered a couple of songs by Bob Dylan, one of them, Mr. Tambourine Man. He also covered Lucy and the Sky with Diamonds by the Beatles. Now, how about that? Now, you got to understand this. And, you know, I'm sure William Shatner has his faults like everybody else. And he's had his ups and downs. And it's true, not everybody likes him. But still, what's impressed me about William Shatner over the years is seeming youthfulness. Now you got to understand this. 1967 now, he was 36 years old. Very few people over 30 years old back in 1967 did not like rock and roll. And they did not, particularly psychedelic rock and roll. The Beach Boys and the Supremes, that was one thing. But the psychedelic, the harder stuff and all that, although Lucy in the Sky and the Diamonds was not hard or anything like that, but still it was in that psychedelic genre. But the fact that he did that song, to me, that was kind of hip. That was the bottom line. That was kind of hip. And 30 years later, he teamed up with Ben Folds. You might remember this one. Ben Folds did a song with William Shatner. William Shatner... Well, Ben Folds did the chorus. Well, he was in the background, and William Shatner talked. It was called "In Love," which was from the album "Fear of Pop" in 1998. Now, I got to tell you this. I do remember. Oh gosh, I vividly remember this. I'm looking down the time tunnel to the early '90s, MTV in the early '90s. William Shatner. I don't know what show he was on MTV. It might have been Jon Stewart. I'm not sure, but. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget this. William Shatner, if I remember correctly, was singing "I Want to Sex You Up" by Color Me Bad. And well, I guess he was a bit of a Casanova. He married several times, I believe. As a matter of fact, during the first season of Star Trek, or second season, I think he was undergoing a divorce at that time. So that must have been a very painful experience, and yet had that professionalism going for him when he was doing that show during that painful experience. But anyway, I'm sure that pain was probably thrown into this record as well. It's a song about regret. It's a song about looking back on things that you regret doing, and you don't feel too good about yourself doing it. And that's the thing about this record, because you know, William Shatner, at times in the past, you couldn't tell if he was just playing around or if he was being serious. But on this record, he's dead serious. His emotions are running the gamut from passion to despondency to, man, why in the hell did I do this? What can I do to take it back? And it's relatable. That's why I think this song is a mass appeal record, because we can all relate to this. Hell, I know I can. But, oh my goodness. And by the way, Joe Jonas. Now, he's not only this is not just a collaboration. This is a labeled This is a label mate collaboration. William Shatner. This album is going to come under, going to be released. Was released. Joe Jonas's new record label. It's called. I think I got my chicken scratched. My handwriting's terrible, but it's called Let's Get It. I think it's the name of the record label. That's going to be off that record label. Came out in 2021, I believe. And I mean, he's taken an unflinching look at himself, at his past. And he's basically bearing his soul. Boy, I got to read you one of my favorite lines of this record. That's just absolutely saturated with, why in the hell did I do this or whatever? But I'm going to do, I know I always say I'm going to do the quote unquote thing and I don't do it, but I'm going to do it this time. I promise I'm going to do it this time. Quote, this is my favorite lyric from the song. Quote, is it so genetic flaw, the genetic flaw that is to blame? Or old religious training steeped in shame? I'm guilty of feeling guilty all the time. Wish there was a way to free my mind. Don't ask me why it is. It's just the way I'm built. Quote unquote. Boy, that's the way I'm built. And it's truly understandable. I mean, it's so relatable. I think this song's got potential. I just flipped over this record because it reminded me of the past. Let me go into that in just a minute. Now, you don't hear these spoken records hardly anymore, at least not played on the radio. Not so true, though, in the distant past. I'll give you a few songs, and just a few. There's plenty of them. I'm sure other people, older people, can come up with a number of records. And one of them, one of the spoken records that was a hit, Deck of Cards by Wink Martindale back in 1959. Jimmy Dean did some spoken records too. Well, there was Big Bad John. He spoke through a little bit of it, sang through some of it. But Jimmy Dean came up with some spoken records with music playing in the background, like Dear Ivan in 1962 and To a Sleeping Beauty in 1962. And oh my goodness, Victor Lundberg, 1967, An Open Letter to My Teenage Son. Oh, that was some powerful stuff right there. That was during the Vietnam era when the protests started to pick up and the draft card burning was picking up, and there was a response song to that too. Also, a year before that, TV host Mike Douglas did a spoken record, The Man in My Little Girl's Life, although I think he did a little singing on that too. What I'm trying to say is there was a tradition. Even in the 70s, Byron McGregor, a Canadian announcer, came out with a song called Americans. That was a hit in 1974. And all these songs that I mentioned, you're not going to hear these on the oldie stations. You're not going to hear these on the oldie stations. But they were hit records. And also, I remember there was Ike and Tina Turner when they did Proud Mary. Tina Turner was speaking before the song kicks in. Bottom line, there's a tradition of this, but the tradition is in the distant past. You don't hear that much anymore. Maybe a more recent example was Max Headroom. I mispronounced that computer-generated person who did Paranoia, something like that back in 1986. But there's a tradition. That's why the song is nostalgic for me. That's why I like to throw things like this in my fantasy playlist, because you don't hear these on the radio. Certainly don't hear these on the radio anymore. I love to hear this being played on the radio. The format for this record, the radio formats for this record would probably be, alternative. I think that would probably be the best bet for this record. An indie form, I don't know about indie, but alternative, because the audience listening to alternative radio may be a little bit more open-minded than the pop audience. Adult alternative, probably not pop. I hate to say that, although I put it on my pop playlist. As a matter of fact, let's go into the future right now. The future is right now on my latest playlist, which was March 20th, 2022. That would be last week. Debuted the song Joe Jonas and Shatner, Clouds of Guilt. Debuted it at number 19 on my fantasy playlist, and you better, I know you probably can't see it that well, but I got it up at number 19. My handwriting is not so great, but of course now going back to my fantasy playlist, February 13th, 2022, and boy, this song's a whopper. Well, it's an introspective song. It's worth listening to, worth adding to your collection if you like to have a thoughtful record as a top 40 extra on my fantasy playlist, February 13th, 2022. It is William Shatner with Jonas with Clouds of Guilt.